What's up, everybody? Hope you're having amazing days so far. I'm host Phil, and we're going to do something a little bit different than what I usually do over here. Usually I do guitar-related reviews on this channel, but this one today is for the content creators out there, or those who aspire to become one, because I got this bad boy over here, the OBSBOT Tiny SE. Let's roll the intro clip and then check out what this bad boy can do for you. We thankfully live in times in which it never was easier and also actually less expensive to become a content creator. And with that freedom of expression comes the entire plethora of different options hardware-wise which we have in order to get our content across. And content creation on a budget is always a little bit tricky, but this one over here is absolutely feature-packed and delivers some really cool quality, and we're going to showcase that. This is the OBSBOT Tiny SE. Now, before we dive any further into this video, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by OBSBOT. They're not only allowing me to keep the Tiny SE, which I hold right now in my hand, they also actively reach out to me and pay me for this review. So I want to let you 100% know what's going on. However, I still want to let you know that you're going to get my honest thoughts and opinion on this camera. I'm going to highlight the positives, but I'm also not going to shy away from the shortcomings of this camera. The OBSBOT Tiny SE is an AI-powered 2-axis PTZ webcam which allows for recording 1080p with up to 100 frames per second. It comes with all the gimmicks and features OBSBOT cameras are known and loved for, like AI auto-tracking, gesture control, and many more. It features a 1/2.8-inch stacked CMOS sensor and an f1.8 aperture, which makes it work really well in low-light situations. Its broad compatibility with streaming and video recording software through the bank makes it a great addition to any content creator setup, and through the OBSBOT Center, you get full control over a ton of different parameters. I personally think all of that feature boasting makes way more sense when we actually get to check out the camera, but first let's check what actually is in the box over here. So, we got this small little box over here. As soon as we open that up, we are greeted first with the manual and or user quick start guide and the warranty card, and then we got this over here. We got the camera straight over here. This is already unpacked, so just that you know. And down below over here we got a small little box which contains a shorter USB cable. I think it's round about 1 meter long or something around that mark. And then we also have a USB-C to USB-A adapter over here wrapped up. So that's basically the entire packaging experience over here. Let's go ahead and actually connect this bad boy over here and then check out the OBSBOT Center. Alright, now let's check out what the Tiny SE is actually capable of when it comes to delivering a picture quality. For that, I'm just going to take my regular USB cable, which is already connected into my PC. I'm going to take this camera connected. I already got the OBSBOT Center software installed on my computer. In my situation, I'm already now set up and way to go. You don't have to necessarily create an account in order to use this over here. I have done that already. So I'm now connecting it simply to my PC. And then after a short period of time, the OBSBOT Tiny SE should be automatically be found by your computer. No installation of drivers necessary in that case. I went then straight ahead and I upgraded the firmware directly. That was the first step which I've done. So now we can see the OBSBOT Center. Now I'm gonna go ahead and show you the software together with the Tiny SE. So let's switch scenes, let's cut over here and then move forward. Let's come to the final segment of the video, and that is comparing the OBSBOT Tiny SE versus the Elgato Facecam Mk2. Now, I'm gonna put the names down below over here, which camera is which, but I'm also gonna point at them so you immediately know. This over here is the Elgato Facecam Mk2. This over here is the OBSBOT Tiny SE. You can see already they look pretty different. Now, there are a few good things and a few bad things when looking at both of them and comparing them to each other. I'm going to point out the pros and cons of each of them. Now, let's first start with the strong suites or the strong points of the Elgato Facecam Mk2. What I really like is that there's lesser noise. So when we're looking at this section over here, there's lesser noise on the Mk2 camera than there is on the OBSBOT Tiny SE. It's not that much less, but it is definitely a difference. Overall, the crispiness and the image quality of the Elgato Facecam Mk2 seems to be better overall because the sensor is a little bit bigger, so there's more light actually passing on to, and therefore, able to, accentuate more details in my face. And especially over here, like looking at this is more crisp on the Mk2 camera. However, what I really like more on the OBSBOT Tiny SE, and this is a big thing for me personally, is color accuracy. You have this very reddish tint on the Elgato Facecam Mk2, which I really cannot actually dial out. And this becomes very apparent when looking at this guitar over here. This guitar has a greenish neon lime tint. That's the color of it, neon lime. If I look at the Elgato Facecam, this is almost yellow. And no matter what color grading I do, currently both of them are not set to any color grading. They're straight out of the box with the internal processing. But without any, or no matter the color grading, I cannot get this yellow out of the guitar and put it back into a green. If I tilt this a little bit, then it gets more into that green segment, while on the OBSBOT Tiny SE, the color is always pretty accurate, pretty dang on. It's a little bit pale in comparison, so it's not as vivid color-wise, but it is accurate in the color tone. And that is for me very, very important. I can live with a little bit more of a washy feel and washy look to it. What I like more also is the headlight on the OBSBOT Tiny SE, because it is a little bit more washy and a little bit more smooth. It looks a little bit better than the hard crispiness of the Elgato Facecam Mk2. That said, none of them is like absolutely crushing the other one over it. However, I have to say, when it comes to my use case, I'd rather have the OBSBOT Tiny SE because of this stuff over here. And then I can actually move freely around, and I can do all the things which I was talking about earlier with doing my amp reviews over here, while on the Elgato Facecam Mk2, it's gonna look very, very static when I'm doing that kind of content filming, while on the OBSBOT Tiny SE, the gimbal functionality is basically the winning trade for me. So let's open up OBSBOT Tiny SE. I got it now set up in OBS, and I'm now tracking my voice with this lavalier microphone, the Lark M2, which I got over here. And yeah, then I got the OBSBOT Center software opened over here in the right side or right corner, whatever you want to call it. One thing to note is that the image which you're seeing right now is unaltered. So I'm not changing anything in post-processing or from OBS. I just set up different things in the OBSBOT Center software. Yes, I have tweaked it to kind of perform the best in this situation, but apart from that, everything is as the camera is giving you. So I do not, consider that cheating in any shape or form. And I must say, I already like the image which we're getting over here. This looks very, very decent. I will compare this later on to an Elgato Facecam Mk2 because I think they're kind of, within the same competitional range. And there are some few things which the OBSBOT Tiny SE is doing better than the Elgato Facecam Mk2 and vice versa. More on that later. What I already really like is the image accuracy, which you're seeing over here. The colors are looking really good, but more on that, as I said, later in the comparison. Let's first talk about the OBSBOT Center software. We got 3 tabs over here: console, image, and more. Console being all of the tracking and gimbal features, image all of the image enhancing features like focus, exposure, color grading, and then more the rest of that. On top of that, we got different functionalities like a video preview. We can set the device on or off. We can record, so we don't have to do that actually in OBS like I'm doing right now. We can set up a virtual camera so that we can manipulate that maybe, or use that for Skype or something like that. And then we have the beauty filters, which I'm not gonna really touch. I'm gonna kind of gloss over that at a later point in time. Remote controller and more settings. Over here in the setting setup, oh no, we cannot actually see that. Let's keep that for a later part in the video. Let's first concentrate on the gimbal and tracking features. Now, currently nothing is activated in regards of tracking. So I'm gonna move the chair away so you can see that nothing is tracking over here. It's not working currently. What we have to do is we got to enable normal tracking. When I'm doing that, the OBSBOT status light is going to change from green to blue, and then it's now tracking me normally. So it's tracking me in my entirety. So when I'm moving out of the frame, it's actually going so far that it's basically tracking my entire body. So that way I can really move freely around. And what I really enjoy is how the gimbal is working. I think that the gimbal is working pretty smooth, pretty nicely over here. So no complaints in that regard. Yeah, there are some digital like Gimbal Features with the Elgato Facecam, where it digitally crops in and then kind of follows you around. I think that looks a little bit stuttery compared to this one, but this looks pretty nice. We got a few different options over here. We got like the upper body thing. That is good for teachers who want to kind of showcase something on a whiteboard or something, so that you're only having like your upper body basically being tracked. Given that this is a budget webcam, as soon as the zoom in kicks in, it's a little bit pixelated. That is to be expected by a digital crop in. This will happen also with other similarly priced webcams. We got stuff like the close-up. This is like when you really want to have it straight in your face going on and not your entire upper body. So there goes that. Then we got the headless functionality. This could be cool as a feature if you want to, you know, like play guitar like I do, and you want to kind of keep the focus on the instrument itself, then you can do that and just play along and then move around and the gimbal will follow you. Or we got, last but not least, the lower body, which is then cropping in on my crotch and more, and then onto my actual legs, so I can do some dance moves over here or something. Not sure what that would be used for, but that would be one possible use case. Apart from that, we got the hand tracking, where we can set up either the left or the right hand. Now, this can be really good for people who are doing like teaching sessions. One thing which you already recognize right now is that it's totally confused regarding right hand and left hand. And this is one of the downsides of it. So if I'm now just using my left hand over here and I want to kind of, you know, showcase a whiteboard and do some tutoring and stuff like that, the tracking in itself is really good, but it gets easily confused with my right hand. You know, like in that case, it's not sure now where to really go, you know? So that's a little bit, that needs a little bit of improvement through software at a later point in time, but in itself, the hand tracking is working. So we're going back to the normal tracking over here. Apart from that, you can also disable the normal tracking and do a manual gimbal setup. So that way you can actually set the gimbal to your liking. And this is really cool because you can use that as a stationary camera and then just move depending on what you want to have. Like if you want to have a different scenery, you can move around like here, or if you want to do something on the desk, you can maybe go ahead and do this over here, stuff like that. So it's cool. And if you want to kind of have the gimbal reactivated, you got the normal tracking. Now, where does this come in use for my particular situation? Why am I so excited about this? Now, I do a lot of guitar review sessions over here. So I review guitar amplifiers, for example, guitars and other equipment. Now let me demonstrate you one situation which you would have to consider when I'm doing like an amplifier review. I'm gonna set this to a manual tracking. Before, I would have to bring in a speaker over here, set an amplifier over here, then I would play like in my normal seating position over here. Then I would have the problem that if I'm too close to the amplifier, I'm gonna get some mean, weird like noises, like interference between the pickup and the amplifier. And then I would have to have a second camera, which is controlling or which is looking at the front panel and all of that stuff. With this type of camera, I can leave everything as it is currently right now. And I could just use the gimbal functionality to kind of showcase what I'm up to. If I now would go ahead and, similar to what we got over here, like over here you can see I got the OBSBOT tail air on a stand, which is pointing towards the amplifiers. If I would do the same with this little buddy over here, then I could actually film myself from a more frontal position and just have that follow me and then really showcase what's going on, be full in picture, and the camera will take care of having me in the picture over here. And this is what I really like about this camera, where it really comes to shine. If I want to showcase something on the cabinet over here, I can do that. I can actually, you know, kneel myself down and then showcase what microphones I got in use over here. I can do the very same over here for the pedal board, you know, like in that case, and then move up again and showcase the amplifier. And I don't have to worry about being actually in frame, in focus, and all of that stuff, because the OBSBOT Tiny SE is taking care of that for me. This is really, really awesome stuff. But that's not all there is to the gimbal functionality. Now, of course, all of these gimbal functionalities are pretty cool and pretty awesome, but what happens if I am now in frame and I now want to kind of turn off the normal tracking? And this is where the second cool thing comes in: gesture control. There are 3 gestures which work with this camera where it will set some settings automatically. One is this over here. You just raise your hand, and now it set off the normal tracking. You hopefully can see that in the OBSBOT Center software page on the right side. So now I can move freely without the gimbal tracking me. Going ahead over here, I can do that then again to start again tracking me. So this is really cool that I have the possibility to kind of control that remotely. Next up, we got the zoom. So when, let's say, I want you to look closer to this amplifier over here, then I would use this gesture over here to zoom out or zoom in. You can set the zoom factor manually in the OBSBOT Center software, or if you want to have a dynamic zoom, you just go ahead and do like this over here. And yeah, this is a little bit tricky. So sometimes like you got to do this, and then you can kind of freely zoom in as much as you want to. And then like this, hang on. And now you have a little bit better of a picture over here, what's going on. Of course, this is pixelated because this is actually like, you know, like a digital zoom. So let's have that again over there. Or you can zoom out of that one, again, back to the default settings. So this is really cool that you got all of these gesture controls going on and this freedom to move around and get the exact picture which you intend to do. In the next tab, we got the image tab over here where we can set the focus, the auto exposure, and other things over here. So let's move first and set up the focus. Now, focus is always a little bit tricky because you can easily get into some focus hunting. And yeah, this will happen, like, you know, if you have like the focus set to auto, it can happen occasionally that you get some focus hunting. However, if you want to really use the gimbal setting, then of course, having an automatic focus is kind of necessary for that one. You got different stuff which you can set up over here, or you can set the manual focus. This works also pretty well, and depending on how close you make your talking head videos. So if I were to do like this over here, and let's dial this down. If I would be like this close and I want to then do my talking point videos, then I would actually get a little bit of a bokeh effect over here, as you can see. So that's pretty cool that you can get this out of this camera with a little bit of work. And yeah, but in the end, it's not designed to do exactly that stuff. So use at your own risk, basically. Next up, we got the auto exposure, which I absolutely do not touch. You know, like there is like a dual native ISO thing going on. So let me set the focus to automatic and let me kind of configure a low light situation so that we're kind of provoking a very low light situation. If I now go to the auto exposure, it kind of brings me to a level where it is acceptable as a webcam. You know, like I can easily use that as a webcam, but to be honest, not for content creation. I got far too much noise over here in this region. Over here, I got a lot of noise as well. And there's a little bit of a bug over here in the auto exposure where when you're going back and forth between different settings, then you sometimes have to turn off and on the camera again in order to reach the ISO of 100 because it's kind of stuck at 400. So let's keep everything on as it was before. So this is like, you know, like my regular lighting setting. Actually, I forgot that light up there. So there we go. This is what my lighting situation would usually look like. And yeah, this looks absolutely fine with that setup over here. Next up, we got white balance. If I set up the temperature automatically, I'm getting a very yellowish tint over here. However, this guitar looks then really color accurate, but this one is anyways very hard to get correct the color. And having this set over here, this still looks very decent, but now the rest looks way more color accurate over here. Down below on the image section, you can set up some stuff like contrast, saturation, sharpness. I, in general, rather just keep everything at normal level. The only thing which I adjusted a little bit is sharpness to get a little bit more, you know, yeah, sharpness. And then the hue, you can set it up to 50. I like to set it up somewhere between 50 and 60 to get the most accurate representation. Maybe something like 55 would be the golden medium. Has a little bit of a red tint, but I can easily live with that one. Okay, in the more setup, in the more tab, we got some stuff like what picture do you want to have when the device is sleeping. So I'm just gonna kind of provoke that. I'm gonna now click on the sleep resume. You can now see that you got this come back soon thing going on. And as soon as I reactivate the device, short focusing, and then we're back to play. We can set on or off the gesture control, or we can also set up over here the audio, and that's going to be the next segment. For the next segment, I'm now using the actual audio of the OBSBOT Tiny SE and not of this lavalier microphone. Hang on, let me activate the tracking, because what I find important when we're having such a gimbal thing going on, then I want that the audio is audible wherever I'm standing in the room, at least from a certain distance over here. You can see on the audio settings that the noise reduction is set to medium and the radio distance is set to standard. The radio distance, what that means is how heavy is the compression going on. If I would be very far away because I want to have like a huge whiteboard, then it would set the radio distance too far. That way my voice is getting more compressed, but of course I'm introducing a little bit more of an unnatural feel to the voice. And the further closer I'm getting actually to the OBSBOT Tiny SE, the more of a natural, like voice capturing I'm getting. And therefore I have to kind of set up the noise reduction. I'm setting the auto gain at all times on, because on these type of cameras, I don't want to mess around with, like setting up the gain of my audio myself, like I'm doing when I'm doing normal, regular videos through either this microphone over here or the lavalier microphone. There I want to have, of course, more control on what's going on, but I'm a different type of content creator because all of my stuff is about audio, music, guitar playing and stuff like that. So, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of a insight on how the audio functionality of the OBSBOT Tiny SE works. Let's start with the beauty filter. I got the video preview opened over here from the OBSBOT Center because when I'm pushing that into OBS and using the camera as a source, then the beauty filter is not applied because that then is deemed that the device being occupied. So we're gonna go over here to the beauty filter, and then we got some different settings which we can set up. Let me move that over here. And one of them is blur. The blur, of course, can be set to two different things or to different levels. We got the native blur, which is a little bit more subtle, but therefore when you're setting it a little bit stronger, you quickly can recognize that over here it's not working that, that smoothly, like capturing, the borders of me. So that does not work that well, but there is advanced, and that really works well, I must say. So that really takes, first of all, my chair also into focus, which I think is really cool, and the rest is blurred out. This is, I wouldn't say like perfect, but a nice fake bokeh effect, of course. Stuff like the microphone would also be in focus, so it's a little bit unnatural in that regard. But if you want to just have like a phone conferencing call and you just kind of want to make a little bit better of an impression and enhance your, your picture quality, then this blur definitely is working out well. And if you want to really push it to the extremes, you can of course set it to a very extreme setting. That way you're kind of only seeing yourself. I would keep it at 1, kind of faking that bokeh effect, and I think that looks okay. I mean, it's not perfect, by no means, but that's quite usable, I must say. This is definitely one of the better blur effects which I have seen so far. So let's move over here. Then there is stuff like retouch. Retouch is a very weird feature. You can actually like make your cheekbones look different and stuff like that. I don't like it at all. Look at this over here. Look at how smoothed out my skin touch is, and like you can then do it like man, and then you can slim it down substantially. This is super unnatural. I don't use any of those things, so that's not coming in over here, but it is there if you want to have it. And then we got some different color grading things where you can set to sheer. There's like very exposed, flim, clear, crystal. So if I would use anything, then I would rather use clear and then use that. But actually, I don't need anything. The color grading already is very much to my liking. Another well thought of detail on the OBSBOT Tiny SE is the mounting mechanism over here. The thread of the OBSBOT is actually embedded into the platform, which also holds it onto the monitor. So if you look at this over here, hang on. This is the thread over here. You do not have to take anything on or off or something in order to place it onto a thread and just mount it onto a stand. That's super easy, and this is really clever, and I really like this. This is also the same thing with the OBSBOT Tail Air. And this comes into play where I mentioned like the ease of use for using it, like setting up a second camera. If I want to use this over here, the Elgato Facecam Mk2, I have to take this over here. I have to kind of fiddle that thing off. I'm not pretending that this is hard. This is actually a little bit tricky. And then I got to take off this thread.
Man, I hate this so much.
Really. Now I got the camera, and now I can set it onto the stand via a thread over here. So, I mean, that works, but that is tedious and cumbersome. And I truly hate it with such a passion. It's such a workflow killer for me that I don't use this camera as a second camera, you know, for different stuff over here in the studio. But this over here is super easy to use, and one of the small, neat little features which people don't pay attention to when they're buying stuff like this over here. So let's wrap up this video and answer the question, who is this actually for? What's the target audience of this? I think that this small little unit especially comes to shine in a streamer setup, maybe as a secondary camera, where you want to have the flexibility to either set it to your face or set it maybe to your hands and have another camera like a mirrorless camera like I'm using right now at your face, and then a secondary at your keyboard and hands. Maybe something like that. Maybe you want to use the gimbal tracking feature in order to just play a little bit around, have some more dynamic content on your page. Maybe you are a tutor and you are using a whiteboard in order to do tutorials and teachings and e-schooling stuff. Then I could easily see the OBSBOT Tiny SE excel at that as well. So there's a lot of different use cases where you can use it. I'm going to certainly use this camera more often as a secondary angle because this is super easy to set up. I can easily just, you know, like place this over here maybe, and then film myself while I'm holding the guitar over here, and then have, you know, that angle at my right hand when I'm filming. I can easily set up the camera over here and film myself while I'm doing content on the amplifiers without setting up something drastically over here. So I'm really excited for these kind of opportunities which this little buddy over here bring to the table. So with that out of the way, let's wrap up this video. I want to again thank OBSBOT for sending out the Tiny SE and also the OBSBOT Tail Air, which I'm going to check out, and also sponsoring this video. I really appreciate that they reached out to me as a small content creator and gave me the chance to highlight their products. Really honors me. And yeah, down below in the description below, you can find all the information, and you can also find a link where you can purchase all the OBSBOT stuff. If you do that, that's an affiliate link. There's going to be a commission, a small kickback to my side. So thank you for that one, everybody. I honestly can't wait until I'm putting the OBSBOT Tiny SE the first time into one of my full production videos. And until then, keep it metal, everybody.